Hey, Sun Devil fans, Brad Denny here with 3TV, CBS 5, and the Speak of the Devils podcast, bringing you another Speak of the Devils Sitdown Series episode, where I bring you in-depth one-on-one conversations with key players, coaches, and other figures within Sun Devil athletics. There's no place like home, and for Arizona State alum and new tight ends coach Jason Mohns, last year's homecoming was a dream come true. But one of the state's most successful high school football coaches had to navigate not just the jump up to major college football, but a difficult season for the Sun Devil program that featured a lot of obstacles, hurdles, and valuable lessons. Now in year two, Mohns has settled in and has an almost brand new group of tight ends to work with as the Sun Devil offense looks to get back on track in 2024. On this episode, we discuss the key lessons from last year, what has led to his success in recruiting, a breakdown of the new tight end room and how they fit in the Sun Devil offensive scheme, and so much more. So let's get to it. Here's my conversation with Jason Mohns. All right, Coach. So right off the bat, it's been the talk of college football for a while now. The video game's coming back. Which of the guys in your tight end room do you think is going to be a little bit most concerned with perhaps his rating in the game?
I mean, listen, if you're a real competitor, I think everybody's going to be concerned with their rating. I think everybody's going to want a good rating, but that's some of that stuff we talk about all the time. Control what you can control. So if you don't like your rating, go put it on the field this fall, and you can help yourself.
So of course, Kenny made some waves with the prank that he pulled off. Pretty funny stuff, and it seemed like the guys really kind of liked it. But kind of in a bigger sense, what do you think it says about the culture? About Kenny likes to say you guys work harder while having the most fun of any team in the country, and that just seems to be another example. Kind of in the second year of this program's culture, how do you think things are coming along on that front?
Yeah, no, I think Coach Dillingham's done a phenomenal job of establishing a culture of exactly what you said. Having more fun than anybody in the country, working harder than anybody in the country. The working hard part, we can see the data when we compare our first spring to the previous spring from before we got here, and then even comparing that to where we are after we wrapped up this spring. I mean, the workload has consistently gone up, but our kids are having fun. They enjoy being here. And I think a lot of that's it's apparent in our recruiting, and I think our current players have been our best recruiters in this 2025 class because they're talking about what we're doing and how they believe in what we're doing and how much fun they're having doing what we're doing. So it's awesome. And Coach Dillingham, he's a young coach, and he relates to the players at a really high level, and it's kind of part of being one of the boys is guys are always clowning on each other and having fun with each other and pulling pranks. And, I think I was impressed. He didn't, none of the coaches knew that was going on. We were just as pranked as anybody, but I think you got to do that. You got to be able to have fun with your guys, and you can't take yourself too serious. And it was a good lesson for the players because number one, what if we were just doing planks in the weight room on a regular Wednesday with Coach Joe? Would you have pushed yourself to that limit? And I think that was kind of part of the message from Coach Dillingham was like, hey, we got to compete like that all the time, whether there's college football, on the line, or it's just a regular day and we're just working to get better. And so I think there was a hidden message in that. But it's also fun and it keeps guys on their toes and it shakes up the monotony of a Tuesday in June. So I thought it was good, and it was well received by our team. I think it was well received across the country. There's always going to be people that don't understand the ins and outs of a college football culture that are like, oh, that's cruel but it wasn't taken like that by anybody in our program.
Yeah, it seemed like the guys in that room were just kind of having fun and with it. And Kenny, even when he was talking to us last week, mentioned that he expects there might be some players that might want to get him back with another prank. Who do you think might be some of the suspects on that team that might be more apt to maybe try to get Kenny back in a fun way?
Oh man, I mean, I think we got some good ones on our team. I think first and foremost, you got to look at the guys that stayed in the fight for like 5.5 minutes and then lost. So it's like you look at Jordan Crook and Kavion Thunderbird and some of those guys that they competed their butts off. I mean, those would be the first guys I'd keep an eye on to see them trying to get me back.
So overall, the team's in the midst of the kind of the summer workout program and working hard with Coach Joe on a day in day out basis. From your perspective, and the coaching staff, how do you think those gains are coming along? How do you see the guys kind of progressing over the course of these hot months?
Yeah, no, I mean our kids are working hard. I think a lot of it you see in the work that they're doing on their own, away from us, and I think that's really what this is. This is, I think, great teams have they're player led, and that player leadership organizes guys to get together and do extra things. And I know we're not really supposed to talk about it because it is extra on their own, but shoot, it's hard to miss it when you're pulling up the facility and going into the office, and there's kids out on the little field, the little turf field off the weight room, and they're putting in extra work. And I mean, it's hard to pull up to the facility really at any time during the week and not catch at least a few guys, if not a few groups out there working and grinding and hustling. And that tells you that we've got strong leadership. We got guys that are bought in and guys that are willing to put the work. So I think that's the first step is having a culture that's player led. And I think we're seeing that right now.
So I want to go back to last year for a little bit. Obviously, as an ASU alum yourself, obviously with the family ties to the university as well, just how did it feel to be running out of that Tillman Tunnel for that first game of the season? Just, all the kind of emotions and things that came along with it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was standing on the sideline in that first game, the crazy Haboob game against Southern Utah. And my son's, he's 5 now. He was 4 at the time, long before, this opportunity at ASU presented itself. We used to watch he calls it Sparky Stump the Bus. So we used to watch Sparky Stump the Bus video. I mean, he would ask me like at bedtime, most kids ask, "Hey, Daddy, can you read me a book?" And he was like, "Daddy, can we watch Sparky Stump the Bus?" So that was when it really hit me, as I was standing on the sideline, and the lights went out and started flickering, and the music turned up, and I knew my family was up in the stands right above the tunnel, and man, I just kind of had a little emotions overcome, and my eyes welled up with tears, and it was a pretty special feeling for me, just thinking back across, like, from my family, my dad coaching there under Coach Cush, and my mom being a cheerleader there, and my wife and I being an alum of that place, and watching the video with my son, like, that all kind of hit me at once, and it was like the realization of, man, I'm here, and I've really achieved a dream of mine to be a part of this team. And the first step into really what the dream is not just being a part of it, but to bring it back to what it once was, and build this program back up into a powerhouse and a team that consistently wins and competes for championships. And so it was cool. It was a great feeling. And it's at least once or twice a week that I'm walking up to the building, and I kind of pinch myself and go, man, I work here, and I coach football here. It's a big deal, and I don't take it for granted. There's not many days go by where I ever don't think about how appreciative I am of this opportunity.
So, of course, that was a really awesome moment. The start of a kind of a very unusual year. Of course, the injuries kind of really drilled things a little bit on the offensive side. I mean, have you ever been a part of a season so unusual, just so many different things kind of, being thrown at a program, and like you had one of your guys making starts at quarterback?
Yeah, no, it was it was one of those things. My very first year at Saguaro in 2012, when I took over, it felt like everything that could go wrong went wrong, and it was just like you just were kind of like waiting, what's the next thing that's going to happen? What's the next thing that happen? And we didn't have the greatest year in terms of Saguaro's history or tradition. But I think it really laid for me, my first year as a head coach. It's like you go through all that adversity. It makes you tougher. You learn who you can count on and who you can rely on, how to circle the wagons and stay in the fight. And so I think there was there's some parallels, at least for me, of just seeing it was like, what can happen next? And it was just one of those years where that happens. But you'd rather get it all out of the way in year one. If you're gonna have to face adversity, let's just take it head on right now. It's gonna bring everybody closer together when you battle through adversity and you come out the other side. And I think we played well in games late in the season and got a couple wins, and took Washington to the brink. At Washington, there was some really positive takeaways where you're like, in spite of all the things that went wrong this year, our kids still showed up and battled, and they still fought, and they still competed, and they still found ways to win games. And I think same thing with our coaches, being creative, being innovative, thinking outside the box, not being afraid to do different things, like going to the Rose Bowl and running the swinging gate. And a testament to Coach Dillingham for it's just like finding ways to win in spite of all the obstacles. And I think going through all that in year one is only going to make us stronger as a program going into year two. And I'm excited to see us have a year where we don't, knock on wood, face that same kind of adversity, and we keep our guys healthy for the most part, and keep the guy behind center upright, and just get some continuity. And I think we're on the right track.
What stood out most about how you saw the players kind of react to all the stuff that, whether it's injuries, kind of the external stuff, how did you see them kind of maybe like circle the wagons and handle those adversities, those obstacles that just seem to be being thrown at them on a week in, week out basis?
Yeah. I mean, I think number one, it's like, you got to hate to lose, and it's got to bother you. And I think we would see that in the locker room. Like there was nobody, like we weren't coming back in the locker room after getting beat and screwing around and playing music and dancing, and like it wasn't like that. I mean, guys were upset, visibly and emotional, and coaches, players, everybody, like it bothered us. And when you put a group of people together that are winners, it hurts to lose. And so I think that was the number one thing is, nobody took it lightly. And then number two, I think, is just guys that just continued to battle, and it wasn't everybody. I mean, there were some guys that tapped out, quote unquote. But I think the majority of our team stayed in the fight, and they kept showing up, and they kept, strapping their helmet on and bringing their lunch pail to practice and finding ways to get better and competing and battling. And so I think it showed us who those guys are that we can rely on. Showed us some guys that we couldn't, and you have to part ways and move on and hope that they find a place where they feel bought into, where they can lay it all on the line. But I feel really good with, like, we had a majority of our guys that stayed in the fight. They laid it on the line, and we know we can count on them now when things get tough, because that's the game of football. Whether you're a 10-win team or a 3-win team, you're going to face adversity. Things are going to get hard, and you have to learn how to rally together and stay in the fight.
As you mentioned, you had some early struggles at the tenure at Saguaro, but for the most part, winning consistently at an elite level, state title after state title. Then you come to Arizona State, and obviously the difficulties from a season ago. What kind of adjustments, or how did you make that approach of just going from doing nothing but winning to a season where there's a lot of adversity, a lot of obstacles? How did you handle that personally?
Yeah, I mean, well, number one, it's hard. It sucked. No, I don't like to lose. I hate losing. I hate losing more than I like winning. I can tell you that. But you have to also understand, we were dealt the hand we were dealt. There were certain things that were outside of our control, and all we can control is our attitude, our energy, the work that we put in, and the steps that we take to continue to move forward day in and day out. And so that's all it is like, I think, the perspective of just going like, hey, it's unrealistic to think you're just going to show up and win and win right away from day one. We took over a program that needed a ground up reconstruction, really. And so I think it's just a matter of saying, like, all right, like, we have to have patience with the process. We have to trust what that process is, and know that if we trust that process and continue to pour into that process, it will, the results will come. And so I think that's just it, is just being committed to the process and believing in the process that Coach Dillingham put in place, and know that if we continue to grind, like, those results will come, and I think they'll come sooner rather than later.
So when you look back on it, like, how are you a better coach today than you were, heading into that season, going through all the things and learning the lessons that you did, and kind of, going to work each and every week with that group of guys?
Yeah. I mean, I think at the end of the day, like, adversity only makes you stronger. If it can make, I guess it can make you tap out and quit, but if you don't quit and you just keep showing up, then it can only make you stronger. So I think, we had a lot of success and didn't have to battle through a lot of adversity late in my career there. But I think, this year, I think, made me better as a coach, as a person, as a husband, as a father. You learn how to get through tough times. You learn how to rely on other people. You learn how to do your job. And it was a different role for me, not being in charge or not calling plays. And so, learning how to be a good assistant and learning how to do my job and be a part of the whole. I think there was a ton of opportunity for growth, and I think I made growth throughout the year. I think I've got still a long way that I can go and continue to grow. And that's why I was so excited about this opportunity, is I knew that I was just scratching the surface for me personally as a coach. And I wanted to get around guys like Coach Dillingham and guys like Coach Arroyo and guys like Coach Tuatela and Coach Iguano and Coach Regal. And I mean, you go on and on and on and on and just continue to grow and learn and get better. It's the same mentality that we want our players to have, to show up to get better every day. I think our coaches have to have that same one. I know that's something that I really thought about and tried to embrace last year in a different role, is just showing up and getting better every day and trying to find ways to help our team and find ways to grow.
And having gone through that first season of major college football, what kind of advice would you give yourself, 1 year ago at this point of, now knowing what you know and have experienced what you experienced?
Oh man, I think the hardest thing for me in year one was just the unknown. Everything was the first. It was the first winter workouts. It was the first spring ball. It was the first spring recruiting. It was the first fall camp. It's like everything was the first. And so I guess I would just tell myself to just take it all in, It's like when you're used to being in control, and you've got a system. And we had a year-round program that I knew inside and out. I knew what was around the corner every step of the way. And so I think it was just like, really just putting your head down, not worrying about things that are outside of your control, not worrying about the unknown, because that's a little bit, that creates anxiety, I think, a little bit, just the fear of the unknown, of what's next or what to expect. So I would just say embrace it, and be a good soldier. And I, things that I tried to do, I kind of had that self dialogue as it all went along. But I think that's the biggest step for me from going into year 2 compared to year 1, is I just think the comfortability of, I know what to expect now. I know what the different phases of the year look like. It's like, and that was an adjustment for everybody, from not only me but for my family. And so I think collectively I feel better now, knowing what to expect, and it's allowed me to just focus that much more on just doing my job and not worrying about any of the other things.
How did you see Kenny Dillingham? Obviously a young head coach, first time at the helm of a program, and all these kind of things are thrown his way. How did you see him kind of navigate some rough waters in year 1?
Yeah, I mean, I thought about it all the time, and I was 30 years old when I got the job at Saguaro, and I thought about all the stuff that I had to deal with at the high school level, 4A high school in Arizona, and how much stress and anxiety and pressure and all that stuff that I felt. And I kept going, man, this dude's not that much older than that, and he's in a Power 5 program in the Pac-12, doing it at this level. And it's just, I had a really great appreciation for him, and how he handled a lot of the pressures and adversities that we went through. Obviously, there's room for growth for everybody, and I think that's the thing that's most impressive about him, is he's a really, really smart dude. And it doesn't take him long to figure things out. And he's always working to get smarter and better and more efficient. And you could see him processing and growing and getting better as everything went by. And that doesn't mean there wasn't bumps in the road or mistakes or things that I'm sure, if he had the chance, that he would do differently. But I think all in all, it was just really impressive to see him at such a young age, being dealt a really difficult hand in year 1 at about the highest level you could get your first head coaching job. He handled it with a lot of class, with a lot of resiliency, and I think it's why everybody in that locker room is excited for our future, because we've got a head coach that's really good, that's really smart, that's only going to get better, and he's all in. I mean, this dude is like, he is as passionate a Sun Devil and as committed to building this thing as anything I've ever seen. And I saw a lot of different staffs come through, obviously not working on them, but from the outside in, from the recruiting standpoint. And it's really awesome and refreshing to know that we have a head coach that is like, he is as committed as you can be to building this thing, and he's pouring every single ounce of everything he has into doing it. So it's why we all show up ready to work and go to bat for him, because it matters to him. It matters to all of us.
Of course, it was a year of adversity, but a lot of good moments too as well. When you look back at in 2023, what are some of the favorite moments you took away from your first season as a Sun Devil coach?
Oh man, I mean, like the win against Washington State, at Sun Devil Stadium, after, we kind of we had a lot of adversity and hit a rough patch. And it was like, just a lot of the things that we talked about as a team that were going to be keys to us winning games showed up. And our kids were excited, and they were having fun. They were competing. They were encouraging each other. And then just the feeling in the locker room afterwards, like seeing the guys celebrate and dance. And it was just like, you felt so good for those guys, because they stayed in it, they stuck to it, and they got rewarded, and that was one that really stood out. And then obviously, like, going to the Rose Bowl and beating UCLA, in the Rose Bowl with smoke and mirrors and a lot of heart and a lot of pride was pretty special. That was pretty awesome. Going up to Washington and playing them, toe to toe for 4 quarters, in a rainy stadium, and you could see the heart and the fight in our guys. There were some really good moments, and there are some things that we can 100% build off of, and I know we're building off of. But yeah, I think the locker room after the Washington State win was such a good feeling, because I felt so good for our guys. I just sat in the back and watched, and just watched them celebrate, and they deserved it. They deserved to have that moment.
Just a year as a college coach, but already shown some really impressive results in recruiting, getting out there. What has allowed for some of your success so far, and out there on the recruiting trail, and building up generations of future Sun Devils?
I mean, I think recruiting is number one, it's a relationship business. And, I spent a lot of time, I spent 16 years building relationships and getting trust and buy-in from kids that were, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. And those are the kids that I'm trying to do the same thing with right now. I think it's a little bit sales. You have to sell yourself, and you have to sell your program, and you have to sell your vision. We can't just recruit to the logo right now. Some schools, it's like they've got a tradition of winning at a high level, and they can just recruit to the logo, and they don't have to sell themselves very much. I think for us, we have to sell the vision of who we are, what we're building, and where we're trying to go, and how we're trying to get there. And I always tell people I'd be a terrible salesman unless I'm selling a product that I wholeheartedly believe in. And I think that's why I'm able to sell this at a high level to really good players, is because I believe it. I believe in what I'm selling. And I believe in our vision. I believe in where we're going and the people that we're going there with. And, I believe in our place. It's a special place. I've had plenty of opportunities to leave here, and there's a reason why I've wanted to stay in the valleys, because it's in my opinion, it's the best place in the country to live. And I think we have everything we need to build a program that can compete for championships. So I think that's why I've had success. I think number one, because I think that's one of my strengths is relationship building and being relatable and connecting with people and all different types of people from all different types of background. I know that's one of the things that allowed me to have success at Saguaro. And then it's believing in the product that we're selling, and I believe it. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, and it's fun to sit down with players that have opportunities and offers from all over the country, and guys that have quote unquote sexier logos than we have right now. But I think we have as good of opportunity as anybody in the country for a kid to come in and be a part of building something special, do it in a great place to live, do it at a great school, do it with a staff and a group of players that are all bought in and have similar visions. And at the end of the day, the logo doesn't mean anything if the opportunity is not there. And I think right now we've got great opportunity for kids to come in and compete, have a chance to make an impact early, and help take a program to another level. And I think that's attractive to kids.
A big part of activating the Valley, of course, is having some success in local recruiting. And you mentioned you spent all those years building relationships, and of course a fixture, and all the success that you had at Saguaro kind of gives you and some other coaches on the staff some of that clout there. Now that about a year and a half of this staff in place, how do you feel that the local relationships are coming along as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, I think the relationships are there. I think the fruit of the labor will show up down the road. I think it's not a 1 or 2 year process. I think you look at the kids, not only 25s but 26s. When they were really forming their opinions of their dream schools and where they'd want to go, and I don't think ASU was as relevant to them, to be honest with you. And so I think what we're really fighting for right now is the 27s and the 28s and the 29s, that as they grow up and they go to a youth football camp in 8th grade, and they go to our ASU football mega camp as a 9th grader, and it's like they're thinking about, dreaming about wanting to play at ASU and getting to build relationships with these coaches. And I know from my experience back when Mike Norvell was the offensive coordinator here, it's like you could see the fruit of his labor show up year 3, year 4. It was like that's when things really started, I think, turning the tide turn. And it's because he stayed consistent. He built relationships. He was honest and genuine. He gave genuine, honest feedback. If we'd hit him up, hey coach, what do you think about this guy? They'd tell us exactly where he stood, exactly where we were. Didn't knock guys because they were from Arizona. And I think we've got a bunch of guys that we know the climate, we know the strong programs. We know the coaches that have seen what major Division I talent looks like, and when those coaches call us and tell us this guy's the real deal, we have those relationships where they're not gonna BS us, and we also know we can trust them. And so I think that's what it comes down to: is you just build those genuine, authentic relationships. You've got to win. I mean, that's the reality in this state. You're not going to be able to consistently land, all the top players if you don't build a consistent winner. And so we've got to win games. I think that's when this tide will really turn. But when you look at Coach Dillingham and Coach Regal and Coach Iguano and Coach Ward and Coach Coop and like all the guys, myself, that have either grown up here, guys that played here, Vince Amy, guys that coached here, guys that recruited here for a long time. I think we have deep ties and we have relationships, and so we just have to continue to foster those relationships and continue to work hard to build relationships with the kids, to be visible, to be seen, to be available, and then start winning games. I think once we put those things all together, I think we'll consistently be able to compete for the top players in the state. But there's going to be top players that always leave and want to go somewhere else too. And so I think if you do a good job in recruiting, you build great relationships, and you lose a guy somewhere, down the road, if he's not happy there and we have an opportunity, then maybe there, is a chance to get him on the bounce back. But I also think we want to recruit at a level, and I think we're starting to, where it's like, hey, Arizona kids, if you go somewhere else out of high school, you might not have the opportunity to come back. We may out recruit you, and we may be full. And there's already been a couple of those cases so far, where there's kids that have reached out to try to come back. They had opportunities to come here to high school, and they don't have the opportunity to bounce back. And I think that's ultimately, you want to create an opportunity where kids know if you don't jump on it and snatch it up, you might not ever have that chance again. And I think that's what we're working to.
On a macro level, there's a new athletic director in Graham Rossini, and he seems to really kind of understand the importance that football has, and especially going into the new Big 12 conference, or maybe the All-State 12 conference, whatever it's called in the future. But also a guy who's like yourself and like Kenny, an ASU alum. What are your thoughts on Graham, taking over the athletic department, and what value do you think that, being an alum of the place that you're working and trying to build and elevate into a championship level brings to your job performance?
Yeah, I mean, well, number one, I just think in the time I've been around him, he's a great dude. He gets it. He's been involved in major professional sports and college athletics for a long time. He understands the dynamics of Arizona State University, which it's different. It's the way things work here is different than they are at other places. And I think to have somebody that understands those dynamics, maybe see some of the things that have been our shortcomings in the past, because he's seen it firsthand, and really have the drive and passion to do the things that we need to do to get us over the hump and get us where we're trying to go. So, I think we're all excited about him. Obviously, just like Coach Dillingham, just like a lot of the guys on our staff that are Sun Devils, it just means a little bit more to us. And just, you're going to pour a little bit extra into making this thing work. And so we have the full faith in him and his leadership and his vision for what we're doing. And we're excited to see, kind of what he has in store and where he's planning on taking it. But yeah, no, I'm excited about it. And it's just, you feel good when you feel like you got a team of guys that are true Sun Devils that care about this place and are going to do whatever it takes to build this program into a consistent winner.
Now, talking some tight ends, new offensive coordinator Marcus Arroyo coming in. What kind of, with his input and his visions, along with Kenny, what does that kind of mean for the tight end position? What kind of opportunities are presented in the Marcus Arroyo offense for the tight end group?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm fired up about what Coach Arroyo's brought to the table offensively. There are a lot of similarities and a lot of stuff that Coach Dillingham's done. But I think there's also a really big NFL influence too with Coach Arroyo's background and some of the relationships and places he's been. So, it's a multiple pro style offense. It really, is built around the usage of 1 and 2 tight ends and 11 and 12 personnel groupings. The tight ends are asked to do everything. They're moved all around the field. Whether they're flexed out, as a number 1 receiver to the boundary and getting one-on-one matchups, whether they're in the core or flexed out to the field, moving all around, moving, from outside back into the core, moving from the core out, shifts and trades and motions, condensed formations. There's a lot of moving pieces. And I think it's really well designed. It's easy to learn and install. But I think it creates a lot of problems for the defenses. And I know just from talking to, like our Coach Coop, our linebackers coach, and Coach Ward, and some of the things that we're doing, that how we're attacking the defense is, as you can see, that Coach Arroyo is he's a high level thinker, and what he's doing scheme wise to attack the weaknesses of defenses, and really how we're using tight ends to create mismatches. I think it's exciting. It's another thing when you talk about recruiting. It's an easy offense to recruit tight ends to, because you can show the guys that have played in this system. We can show install cut ups and show NFL clips of guys doing the same thing that we're going to ask our guys to do on Sundays. And so it's awesome. I'm fired up about it. I think Coach is he's extremely organized. He's extremely detailed. Everybody understands what the expectation is. They understand how he expects things to be done. I think our efficiency with how we teach and how we install and how we meet and how we, he talks about briefing and debriefing, and it's just a really well-oiled machine. And I feel like I've learned a ton in a short period of time from Coach Arroyo and how he does things as a coordinator. And it's one of the things I've been really excited about, as a longtime play caller at the high school level. And I was excited to get to this level and really learn and grow. And I felt like I've had the chance to really do that since Coach got here.
And looking back at spring practices, in a kind of collective sense, what were some of the biggest gains made by your position group, and how much of what you were able to accomplish in spring, was on kind of your spring to-do list?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously we had a lot of changes, and so it was just getting guys in and getting them up to speed. And I mean, I think that was part of the benefit of having a new coordinator and kind of a new scheme. Is it wasn't like there was new guys coming in that were way behind other guys. It was kind of everybody started on the same page. So I think it was just reestablishing a culture of the expectations of our room. I think I was the only position group on the team that didn't have any new players last year. As all of our guys were holdovers from the previous group, from the previous regime, and so they were great guys, and we had a good culture in our room. I love all those guys, but it's also refreshing now that we can really establish a new identity and really what we want the identity of this tight end position to be in this new era. And I think to a certain extent last year, because we had so many guys that had been there, they were older. There was really nobody that knew that came in. A lot of the, I think, identity and culture was kind of stuff that we inherited from the previous group. And so I think that's now is really being able to put our stamp on the tight end room and how we play, the physicality of that position, and the willingness to do the dirty work and to roll up our sleeves and not really get so hung up on touches and stats and numbers and things like that, and really just whatever it takes, doing whatever it takes for the team to win games, and knowing that if we do that, the ball's going to find us and we're going to get taken care of. And so I was excited. It was fun to work with, Marquise and Douglas coming in, a guy that played at Florida State, competed and probably should have been in the college football playoff and played significant reps for them. And, then bring Cameron Harpole in from San Diego State and a kid that, got a chance to start like the last 3-4 games of the year for them and really kind of came into his own. And those guys came in and competed their tails off. They worked hard. They brought a physicality to the team that was really refreshing. And so, I thought it was a great spring. I thought we established, a culture for our room, kind of built around that, like we said, the physicality. And then, bringing obviously Shimon in at the end of spring, and just having a kid he's hungry to be a part of a culture and to compete and to work and have fun. And he's obviously a talented player, and he's really fitting well with our guys. He's fitting well with Keese and Cam and some of the young guys that we have. So we're excited about the direction that group's going. We've got 3 veteran guys, and then we've got some good young talent that we're excited about for the future.
Yeah, so we'll run down those guys here in a moment, but just in a broad sense, you mentioned you went from having a bunch of returning guys to, I believe, Colson's the only guy who was on the roster last year who came back, so a lot of new faces. What are some of the challenges and you mentioned possible benefits of almost kind of rebuilding the position with a whole new cast of characters?
Yeah, I think that's obviously with the portal. You don't, when you start over, you're not starting over with all young guys. You start over with some mature veteran guys and guys that have played major college football. So I think that's the benefit of we're bringing in some guys that have played significant snaps and reps in big time college football, and guys that have had success and played at a high level. Shimon at Cincinnati, they were a big time team. They were a college football playoff caliber team, and so we've got guys that have played in big games and made big plays in big games and have been a part of winning teams. And so I think that bringing that culture in is important. You almost kind of hit the reset and kind of you want to wash away the mentality of like it's hard to overcome kind of having a losing culture. And I think you want to have guys that expect to win. When you step out of the tunnel, you should expect to win. And so I think when you bring in some guys that have played and been a part of winning programs, you bring in a little bit of that mental toughness and that mindset of like, we're going to win this game. We're going to find a way to get it done. So it's been fun to really just establish a culture with guys that nobody can is in the room saying, well, we used to do it this way or we did it like this. Like, no, like this is how we do it. This is how we do it at Arizona State, and everybody's learning together and growing and building it together. And so I think our guys have bought into that of really building a culture. And we've got some non-negotiables that we talk about all the time, and some of it's team based and some of it's tight end based, and but our guys are bought in and excited, and I'm excited to grow with this group.
So as we wind down here, I want to get your quick thoughts on some of the guys in your room. What kind of skill set they bring to this offense, and what you know of so far. Obviously, Marquise and Douglas is a guy you mentioned has that experience playing at Florida State, playing a key contributor and a team that had some good success, as well as a guy who's got a pretty big frame.
Yeah, he's a monster. 270 plus pounds. I think he was like 278 the last time. Hit 19.1 miles an hour on the catapult at 278 pounds, which is freakish. Long, giant hands. Physical, and he just gobbles people up, in the run game, and been really good in protection. Very smart, really high football IQ. And actually is I think surprises people with the way that he bends and moves and makes plays after the catch and things like that. So really like what he brings to the table. I mean, he's a monster of a man. Bringing in Shimon. Shimon is he's super athletic. I mean, he's a dude that hits over 20 miles an hour in the catapult. Big kid, in the 260 pound range, and can really move and really run. Got some toughness to him, got an edge to him, has done a good job of coming in and really being eager to learn and being hungry to learn. I feel like he's picking stuff up at a really high level, and that's exciting. He's asked phenomenal questions. I think that's a sign of intelligence when we're installing something, and Shimon's asked some really high level, like next level questions about some of the things that we've talked about, and that's really impressed me with, like, all right, this guy's thinking about football at a high level, and he understands it. He's, I think, going to be a kid that has a chance to really be special. I think very complimentary piece when you talk about Shimon and Keese. Those guys are different. They're different tight ends. And I think same thing with Cam Harple. I think he's a different type of tight end too than the first two we talked about. And Cam's a kid that really got a chance to start late in the year at San Diego State. Played really well. Talked to a lot of people there on the staff, players that I know that were there, guys that played against him. Everybody had great things to say about him. He's a kid that has just grown and developed physically and on the field since he left high school. And I think his best football is still ahead of him. He's really smart. He's a tremendous worker. He's a grinder. He's physical. He's just one of those guys, like, he does everything right. He's going to be in position. He's going to know what to do. He's going to do it with, to the best of his ability. So I think he's a guy that, he's going to push and compete to play a ton of reps. I think those three guys are all complementary pieces to each other. I don't think any one of those three is the same guy. And I think that they all can push each other, but they all can also be on the field at the same time. They all do different things. And so, I don't think it's unrealistic to be able to get into 12 and 13 personnel. And I think all three of those guys will play significant reps this year. And, the guy that shows up and makes plays and consistent, may be able to steal some more reps and get the lion's share. But I don't think there's a reason why we can't play those three a ton of snaps this season and get a lot of productivity out of all three of them.
Some younger guys as well in that group. Behind those three, Jaden Fortier is a guy who had monster production at the prep level before an unfortunate injury. How's he looking on the way back? And I also believe James Giggy, a local guy with some great athleticism, might get a look with your group as well.
Yeah, no, Jaden just got in, just moved him into the dorms on Saturday, and had brunch with him and his mom and his dad yesterday morning for Father's Day. And he's fired up to be here. Unfortunately for him, he left Oregon at the best time of the year and came to Tempe at the worst time of the year. So he was hurting a little bit with the heat slapping him in the face. But he's been working his tail off to rehab from his injury. He's eager. He's telling me there's no way you're keeping me off the field, and I'm gonna show you. And I love it. Like that's why I recruited him. He's an elite competitor. He's a 2-time state champion basketball player, and part of the reason why he didn't graduate early is he was planning on trying to go and help his team three-peat and before the injury. But defensive player of the year in the state and first team all everything on offense. So he brings a lot to the table. He's different. Obviously he's young and we're going to rehab him from that injury. We're not going to rush him back. We don't need to rush him back. We're going to bring him back at his pace. We're going to rely on Jerry and our team doctors to really kind of tell us where he's at. But we're excited about him. He's got a chance to be a big time player, and he's hungry. He loves football. He's a worker. He's a competitor. And so he's got a lot of those intangibles. And kid wants to be at Arizona State, man. Those are the kind of kids we want, because he had some great opportunities, as his senior season went on, and he just continued to just shine. We had more and more schools that tried to come in and steal him from us. So, the fact that we were able to hang on to him shows you how much he wants to be here, and how much he believes in what we're doing. And so those are the guys we want. We want guys that care about this place, that want to be here, and that are willing to work. And he's one of those guys for sure.
Yeah, and then James Giggy, it looks like he's going to be switching over from D-line. He has tremendous athleticism. What kind of, maybe skill sets translate over to the tight end position?
Yeah, the gig, we saw him. I actually was the first one. I was walking up. We had a 7-on-7 event last year, and I was talking to his head coach, who's a longtime legendary head coach in Arizona up at Bradshaw Mountain. And he was like, Coach, I've been doing this for a long time. This is one of the most dynamic kids I've ever had. He's big, he's fast, he's smart, he's strong, he's athletic as heck. And I went and watched him, and I got on the group chat with all the coaches, like, hey, there's a kid over here from Bradshaw Mountain that's different. He's just a big athlete. I wasn't thinking tight end at the time. I honestly, I was like, this kid might be a phenomenal D tackle. And I think we watched him. We're like, this kid's he's big and he's long and he's athletic and he's something. We're not quite sure what he is, but he's something. And I think as we looked at the depth chart and the numbers, I think we had pretty good depth in the defensive line group, and felt good with where they were at. And we were pretty thin, we were thinner at tight end. And so I think with James's background playing on offense and being a pretty darn good tight end at Bradshaw Mountain, we thought, at least for the the near future, we're going to put him in that group. He's done really well. You look at things that he's done so far in our summer workouts. He bends, he moves really well. He's impressed Coach Joe in the weight room. He catches the ball pretty well. He's twitchy, and so he's a kid where it's like he's a different style of tight end. He might be more of like the Case Hatch, like fullback type tight end, H-back, where he's a thumper or whatever. But man, this kid's got a chance, and so it's been fun to have him in the room. He's athletic, he's competitive. I mean, he carries himself with so much maturity, and he's fun to have in the group. And he's not like your typical freshman. He's different. You would think a small town kid, incoming freshman, would be really reserved and kind of insecure, and he's the exact opposite. He's fun. He cracks us up. We got our tight end dinners and group chats and stuff like that. And Giggy's always saying something crazy, or he's clowning with the older guys, and it's been fun to have him. So yeah, I think he's kind of the wild card of our group. I think he has a really legitimate chance to turn himself into a guy that makes an impact in this program. So it'll be fun to watch him develop over the coming years.
Just a few weeks until fall camp gets underway. During those weeks as you guys ramp up for the 31st opener against Wyoming, what are the top things that you want to see in camp from your guys?
And I think it's just, again, we talk about establishing an identity of just a physicality. And I think that's it, and toughness. And we talk about toughness being mental, physical, and emotional. But I think that's really what we want to see from this group, is like showing up, being consistent with the effort. And it's like, yeah, it's great. You come out and have a great practice and make some plays, and you're flying around, and the next day you come out and it looks like somebody peed in your Cheerios and you're feeling sorry for yourself. Like that's not success. That's not successful football. So just building consistent habits, consistent effort. And then I think the big thing for us is just toughness, is like physicality and toughness, and getting after people, making the plays away from the ball that are the difference between being good and being great. And so I know our guys are bought into that, and competing. We got three guys that we think are pretty darn good, and they got to show up and compete day in and day out and make each other better. And if they do that, it's going to make our team better. And I think we got some phenomenal pieces. When we just talked about on offense, we got some phenomenal pieces to, I think, really have the making of an offense that can be very successful.
And ultimately, if things go to plan, what are Sun Devil fans and Mountain America Stadium and fans across the Big 12 or All-State 12, what are they going to see from this group of 2024 Sun Devil tight ends?
Oh man, I think you're going to see a group that can, impact the game in a lot of different ways. I think you're going to see physicality at the point of attack. I mean, that's going to be something that we continue to harp on, is really getting after guys, being able to have a physical run game, to be able to set up play action shots. It builds from that. So I think number one, you're going to see a physical group that gets after people. A group that has the ability to make big plays. That should be targeted in the red zone and be able to finish drives. Whether that's running behind our guys or creating matchups for our guys. to use their size and their length to create mismatches. So I think it's going to be a fun group. They're going to be guys that are bought into the team. They're going to play hard. They're going to show up on special teams and fly down the field and put their face on people. And I think that's the big thing with this group this year is, man, we're going to bring it and we're going to roll up our sleeves, put our hard hats on, and be willing to do the dirty work.
I'd like to thank Jason for taking the time to talk with me for this episode. Make sure you are subscribed to Speak of the Devils on the podcast platform of your choice for more great Sitdown Series episodes featuring the entire Sun Devil football coaching staff, a number of key players, as well as the flagship show, keeping you informed all off-season long. And also be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram at bdenny29.